A notorious Hell's Angel member is sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom was packed, buzzing with tension as the judge prepared to deliver his verdict. On trial was Jack Reaper Sullivan, a high-ranking member of the Hell's Angels, notorious for his brutal enforcement tactics and iron-fisted control over the outlaw biker world. For years he had been untouchable, his crimes whispered about but never proven, until now. The prosecution had built a rock-solid case against him, linking him to multiple murders, drug trafficking, and extortion. Witnesses had disappeared or refused to testify out of fear, but forensic evidence and undercover surveillance had finally sealed his fate. When the judge handed down the sentence, life without the possibility of parole, a hush fell over the courtroom. Sullivan smirked, unfazed. He had always known this day might come. As he was escorted out in chains, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, but he didn't flinch. He wasn't just any criminal. He was a legend in the outlaw biker world, and prison wasn't the end for him. It was just another battlefield. Arrival at maximum security, Sullivan was sent to Blackridge Penitentiary, a maximum security prison notorious for housing the country's most violent criminals. From the moment he stepped inside, he knew he had to establish dominance. The guards knew who he was, and so did the inmates. Some feared him, others saw him as a challenge. On his first day in the yard, a group of rival gang members tried to test him. A brutal fight erupted. Sullivan took a few hits, but left 3 men bleeding on the ground before the guards intervened. That was enough to send a clear message. He wasn't just another inmate, he was still in control. Running the show from behind bars. Despite being locked up, Sullivan wasn't out of the game. He had spent years building a network, and prison wasn't going to stop his operations. Through smuggled cell phones, coded messages, and corrupt guards, he continued to influence the outside world. Drug deals, extortion rackets, and even hits were still being carried out under his. Despite being locked up, he quickly establishes dominance over the prison population. From the moment Jack Reaper Sullivan stepped through the iron gates of Blackridge Penitentiary, he knew the game had changed, but the rules remained the same. He wasn't just another inmate. He was a high-ranking Hell's Angel, a man whose name carried weight in the criminal underworld. In prison, respect was currency, and fear was power. Sullivan had both in abundance. As he was escorted to his cell, inmates watched from behind bars, whispering his name. Some respected him, others saw him as a threat. The prison was controlled by different factions: white supremacists, Latino cartels, black syndicates, and independent enforcers. But no one ran the place entirely. Sullivan knew that would have to change. First impressions, the yard test. On his first day in the yard, he made sure to walk in like he owned the place. Prison yards were battlegrounds where alliances were made and power was tested. A few members of a rival biker gang, the Iron Vultures, watched him closely. Their leader, Vince Knuckles Carter, had been running the white gangs inside for years. Sullivan knew that meant trouble. The challenge came faster than expected. 2 Iron Vultures cornered him near the weight bench, testing his reputation. "You ain't the king in here, Reaper," one of them sneered. Sullivan didn't reply. He just acted. With 2 brutal punches, he shattered the first man's nose. The second lunged at him with a shank, but Sullivan caught his wrist, twisted it violently, and slammed the guy's head into a concrete bench. Blood splattered. The yard went silent. The guards rushed in, but by then the message had been sent. Jack Sullivan wasn't just going to survive in Blackridge, he was going to rule it. Building an empire behind bars. After that, Sullivan moved strategically. He didn't pick fights, he made deals. He got in good with the Aryan Brotherhood, securing protection and trade routes inside. He made contacts with the Mexican mafia, ensuring access to contraband. Even the prison guards, recognizing his influence, began taking bribes to look the other way. Through smuggled phones, coded messages, and corrupt staff, Sullivan kept his operations running. Drug shipments, extortion, and even outside assassinations were still happening at his command. Breaking the warden's control. The warden, Frank Delaney, saw what was happening. He tried isolating Sullivan, putting him in solitary, but it didn't work. Even from the hole, Sullivan had reach. A week later, Delaney's car was firebombed outside his home. The message was clear. Not even the warden was untouchable. Inside Blackridge, Sullivan was no longer just an inmate. He was the undisputed king. He had turned a life sentence into a throne, proving that even behind bars, power belonged to the strongest. And no one was stronger than Reaper Sullivan. He forms alliances with other gangs while eliminating rivals. With his reputation established through sheer brutality, Jack Reaper Sullivan knew that brute force alone wouldn't keep him on top. Prison wasn't just about survival, it was about control. And control required alliances. He had no interest in being just another inmate. He wanted to rule Blackridge Penitentiary from the inside out. But ruling meant eliminating threats and securing loyalty. That's exactly what he set out to do. The first alliance, the Aryan Brotherhood. Sullivan's first move was to solidify his standing with the Aryan Brotherhood, AB. Being a Hells Angel meant he already had connections to the white supremacist prison gang, but loyalty inside was earned, not given. Sullivan approached Dale Skinner Madsen, the AB shot caller inside Blackridge. "I keep my guys in line and I make sure business runs smooth," Sullivan told him. "In return, I get access to phones, drugs, and protection." Skinner agreed, but there was a test: eliminate a problem. A small, independent crew had been refusing to pay AB their share of the drug trade. Within 48 hours, Sullivan orchestrated a brutal attack, using a mix of his own men and AB enforcers to stab the leader to death in the showers. No witnesses, no survivors. The deal was sealed. Sullivan now had AB backing, giving him power over most of the white population in the prison. But he wasn't stopping there. Expanding influence, the Mexican Mafia. With the AB on his side, Sullivan turned his attention to the Mexican Mafia, La M. While traditionally rivals, he saw an opportunity: mutual business. The Mexican Mafia controlled the drug pipeline inside Blackridge, but they needed a safe distribution network among white inmates. Sullivan had the connections. His pitch to Hector Diablo Rivera, the M leader, was simple. "You get your product moving through my channels, my guys don't skim, and in return, we keep the peace between our people." Diablo was skeptical at first, but Sullivan had something to offer: removal of a problem. The Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, had been disrupting Eames' operations. Sullivan promised to handle it. 2 days later, a high-ranking BGF member was found strangled in his cell. The hit was quick, quiet, and untraceable. Diablo agreed to the alliance. Sullivan now had access to drugs, contraband, and a powerful ally among Latino inmates. Eliminating the final threat, the Iron Vultures. With a B and Ime in his pocket, Sullivan had one major threat left: the Iron Vultures, a rival outlaw biker gang with members inside Blackridge. Their leader, Vince Knuckles Carter, wanted him dead. Sullivan made the first move. Using an AB contact, he had Carter set up in a staged fight in the yard. The second Carter threw the first punch, guards swarmed in, planting a shank on him. He was immediately sent to solitary. Without Carter's leadership, the Iron Vultures crumbled. Sullivan had done it, rivals eliminated, alliances secured. Now he didn't just survive in Blackridge, he ruled it. The prison guards fear him, just as much as the inmates by now, Jack Reaper. Sullivan wasn't just another inmate in Blackridge Penitentiary, he was its unofficial king. He had secured alliances with the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia, eliminated his rivals, and controlled the flow of drugs, contraband, and violence inside the prison. But true power wasn't just about ruling over the inmates. It was about controlling the guards, too. At first, the correctional officers, COs, treated him like any other high-profile criminal. They followed protocol, kept a close eye on him, and searched his cell regularly. But as time passed, they began to realize something chilling. Sullivan wasn't afraid of them. More than that, he could reach them, anywhere, anytime. The first sign that Sullivan was different came when a new guard, Officer Jenkins, tried to establish authority. He made the mistake of shoving Sullivan against the wall during a routine search, whispering, "You're not running anything in here, biker boy." Sullivan didn't react, at least not immediately. But 2 nights later, Jenkins' wife's car was firebombed outside their home. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. The next day, when Jenkins walked past Sullivan's cell, he found a small note tucked into his belt. "Next time, it won't be your car." Jenkins put in a transfer request that same week. He never came back. The guards start taking bribes. Once Sullivan proved that his influence extended beyond the prison walls, the guards had a choice: fear him or work for him. Some chose the latter. Officer Mason, a veteran CO, was the first to fold. A father of 3 with gambling debts, he started smuggling in cigarettes and burner phones for Sullivan's crew in exchange for cash payments delivered to his brother outside. Soon other guards followed, some for money, some out of fear. Through these corrupt officers, Sullivan was able to control cell searches, ensuring his contraband was never found, prison transfers, getting threats moved to other facilities, security footage, erasing evidence of fights and hits. The warden's mistake, Warden Frank Delaney tried to crack down, ordering a full lockdown and mass cell searches to disrupt Sullivan's operations. It was a bold move, but a foolish one. 3 days later, Delaney's teenage son was jumped outside his school. His control over the prison grows until an unexpected betrayal leads to his downfall. For months, Jack Reaper Sullivan ruled Blackridge Penitentiary like a king. He controlled the drug trade, protection rackets, and smuggling operations, had guards on his payroll, and alliances with the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia. Even the warden feared him, knowing that Sullivan's reach extended beyond the prison walls. But in prison, power never lasts forever, and Sullivan was about to learn that the hardest way possible: absolute power inside Blackridge. With rival gangs crushed and the guards under his influence, Sullivan operated with impunity. Weapons, cell phones, and drugs flowed in and out of Blackridge, all under his watch. Anyone who challenged his rule disappeared, either transferred out, sent to the infirmary, or found dead in their cells. Even in solitary confinement, he remained untouchable. When the warden tried to isolate him, his crew set fire to the laundry room, causing a full-scale lockdown. The message was clear: Sullivan ran the prison, not the administration. But the bigger the empire, the greater the risk of betrayal. The betrayal Sullivan's downfall started with Devin "Ghost" Carter, a low-level member of his crew. Ghost was a runner. He moved drugs and messages between cell blocks, earning his keep. But what Sullivan didn't know was that Ghost had been flipped by the feds. The FBI had threatened Ghost with an extended sentence and used his family as leverage. In exchange for protection, he agreed to wear a wire and gather evidence against Sullivan. Slowly, Ghost started recording conversations, noting orders, and tracking illegal transactions. He played his role perfectly, even setting up fake deals to lure Sullivan into making direct orders. For weeks, Sullivan suspected nothing, until it was too late. The raid one morning, Blackridge went into full lockdown. The sound of banging doors and shouting guards filled the air. Sullivan was in his cell when a team of federal agents stormed in, pulling him out in chains. They had audio recordings, transaction logs, and testimony from multiple snitches, including Ghost. The betrayal hit harder than any prison fight he had ever been in. Ghost, the kid he had trusted, had sold him out. But it wasn't just about new charges. The feds were transferring him to a supermax prison, a place where he would have no allies, no power, and no control. The fall of a kin. As he was dragged past the yard, his former allies watched in silence. Some pitied him. Others saw an opportunity. His empire was now up for grabs. The cycle of power was resetting. Sullivan had ruled Blackridge like a king. But in prison, kings don't retire. They get replaced.